Dixon. I lived in Alaska for 23 years, commercial fished Cook Inlet for 20 of them. And throughout the entire time, it was always a dream of our family to have everybody fish with us. And it didn't work out that way. But what did work out is that my wife and I, who celebrated our 40th anniversary this last year, she's still with me after 20 years of fishing. This is my 21st Fisher Poets gathering, and it's her 20th. So we kind of like it. And I hope we have 20 more. So you bet, and more. So I had two poems. I couldn't decide which one to read, so I folded them up, shuffled them, and then picked this one. Okay, is that better? Yes. Now I can't see the page. Will this work? I think it's probably better on you. I'm sorry. This is my most recent fishing poem, except for the one my son challenged me for, some of you know about. View, and I need to thank Sierra Golden for the prompt she gave me inadvertently that inspired this. View from the stern. Often I stood on the back deck of my boat, legs working like pistons as she rolled forward and aft, port to starboard. Some days that dance required more work. When the breeze freshened, it would send a thrill mixed with apprehension to tighten my chest. More than once I stood wide-eyed and dumb as I watched a front move up the inlet, a dark cloud curtain. Reports of building seas turned excitement to dread. We picked gear, frantic as fear rose with the wind's song in the rigging, only to find our imaginations were far fiercer than that storm. Rather than run home with tails tucked, we stayed and rode it out. Other fish days, long gone to me now, the ocean offered up magical reflections on glassy seas with a slight swell coming in with the flood. Wherever we would look, moving lines of light rolled off dark water, adjacent to dark lines floating on light. I'd pause, find myself absorbed, mesmerized, entranced, instead of watching fish hit the net, and wonder, how did I get to be so lucky? Someone once asked me, what's it like working on the water for a living? Thank you.
So last year was my very first Fisher Poets gathering, so this is my second. And within that year, I've learned a lot. And I wanted to start by thanking all of the veteran poets in the room, because you may not know it, but us newer poets really look up to you, and we learn from you, and you make us stronger poets. And I want to especially express my gratitude to Meezy and Steve, because in the last year I have been able to perform with them many times, and you guys have been exceptional mentors, so thank you so much. So this poem is about love and loss, and I think we've all done that. And I've loved and lost quite recently, and I really wished it had happened in the month of July so I could heal on the water. But I would pick this weekend and this event as the next best thing. So this is my love letter to the sea. For there doesn't exist a love I have missed to succeed in release of the sea's tightened grip, because I have yet found one that lifts me from ground like she cradles the part of my heart she's unwound. I won't permit to let go of her seasonal show that I crave and I yearn for with the melting of snow. There is no understanding of the salt that is landing on my skeptical face when considering handing myself to another, an adulterous smother. I don't want the clasp of his hand as my lover, for there doesn't exist a vigorous kiss that can pry heavy boots from a deck I have rinsed of all expectation, love, and elation, a hope I once held by practicing patience. He could never compete with my hunger for beasts, snapping gills so the blood can run down to my feet. With a net I can set, knots I always forget, monofilament fibers that fall between steps. His fathoms they will, not no body to fill, a woman, an ocean, my insides to spill, out into her depths, rippled, circled, and swept, under sapphire surface, anchored, I accept. I've realized this life of a mistress or wife to collective salt waters will forever suffice. So when gravity slips, lay me down with my ship and let me breathe her all in. Down my throat the salt drips. I will never regret this choice in retrospect. A fisherman's song outweighs romantic debt. For there doesn't exist a love I have missed, such the beauty of her and the tides that she rips. Thank you.
Dan O'Quinn, Seattle, Washington. I wasn't sure if I was going to get up this morning and do anything, but I don't want Ron McDaniel going home to Arkansas thinking he's like the two-headed cow at the 4-H fair when he comes to Fisher Poets gathering. So I'm going to do a cowboy poem for you. These are not my words, written by a cowboy poet named Baxter Black. But it fits real well here because it was written about a gal from Astoria who went out Ron's way. She was visiting Arkansas and was real surprised to see a familiar and pleasant item on the menu. The sign upon the cafe wall yeah, let me take my supplement here. The sign upon the cafe wall said oysters, 50 cents. How quaint, the blue-eyed sweetheart said with some bewilderance. I didn't know they served such fare out here upon the plain. Oh, sure, her cowboy date replied. We're really quite urbane. I suppose they must be Willapa or Blue Point, don't you think? No, ma'am, they're mostly Hereford Cross, and usually they're pink. But I have been that cold myself, and what you say could be true. That if a man looked close enough, their points sure could be blue. I like to gather them myself, she said, out on the bay alone. I pluck them from the murky depths and smash them with a stone. The cowboy winced, imagining a calf with her beneath. But he bragged, yeah, me, I use my pocket knife and yank them with my teeth. Oh my, she said, you animal, how crude and unrefined. Your masculine assertiveness sends a shiver down my spine. But I prefer a butcher knife, too dull to really cut. I wedge it in on either side and crack it like a nut. I pry them out, and if they resist, sometimes I'll use the pliers, or even Grandpa's pruning shears if that's what it requires. Whew, the hair stood on the cowboy's neck, his stomach did a whirl. He'd never heard such grisly talk, especially from a girl. I like 'em fresh, the sweetheart said, and laid her menu down, then ordered oysters for them both when the waiter came around. The cowboy smiled gamely, though her words stuck in his craw. But he finally fainted dead away when she said, "I'll have mine raw."
Well, that's a tough one to follow. I'm gonna do an older piece. I was inspired by a piece that, it's a piece about the graying of the fleet after hearing the piece that Georgie did on Thursday. And if you guys haven't had a chance to see her yet, I think she's one of the new rising stars of this gathering. So make sure to put her on your list for next year. I also feel like it's kind of a metaphor for this weekend that always sneaks up on us and always leaves too quickly. It's called Tides of Change. It happens in an instant, like a lightning strike. A flash of light, and your world is turned on its head. I didn't know that "see you around" was actually goodbye. And now I'm face to face with my own mortality, picking up the pieces of a shattered illusion from the shadow of a man who stood like a totem for everything I longed to find in myself, and who fell like a sneaker wave, breaking across the deck, knocking me off my feet before I even knew I was standing up. I can still hear his gruff voice barking into the forecastle at 2 o'clock in the morning. "I don't see any boots on the deck. There's plenty of time to sleep when you're dead, boys." I hope he's sleeping well. At least the sea didn't get him. Someone said at his memorial. But we were all left fighting for air and reaching for words in his wake. It can happen in an instant, or it can happen so slowly you don't even see it coming, like the fog rolling in. I looked up just in time to see the sterns of a generation disappearing into the mist, carrying with them a wealth of knowledge and a depth of history as rich and as vast as the ocean on which I ride. And I am left to navigate a sea of grief and confusion, using the compass of my heart, poring over the tattered charts of memory, looking for direction. I was so focused on the days that the years snuck by, like seawater sifted through baleen, or salmon slipping past my hooks on the incoming tide. I am powerless against the ebb, the flow, and the steady march of time. The torch is passed, but are my hands calloused enough to carry its flame? It happens, whether I'm ready or not. Mentors move on, but I take their wisdom to sea with me, a talisman polished by centuries of strong, weathered hands, a tradition of memories I hold with reverence until it's my turn to pass them on. Stepping into shoes I can't possibly fill, I stumble awkwardly into this adolescence, praying for my feet to grow, searching for strength I'm not sure I possess, while all around the waves just roll on. Boats change hands, change paint, and change names, but the silhouettes are the same. They slide past, silently, ghosts in the fog.
Fisher Poet Fishing Game gonna pinch us here. Thanks everybody for joining us. I got a short thing I'd read. I wrote it as an invitation to this year's Fisher Poets Gathering to people who might not know about it, and of course you all know about it, so it's only slightly appropriate, but you could consider it an invitation to next year's. And I'm probably not telling you anything you don't already know. It was the National Fishermen on their online version there. But I don't know who's going to read it. So say you've just finished stripping the season's ragged gill net and have stacked the cork line and lead line in tidy figure eights above the high tide line. The coffee in your cup has grown cold. You wander down the beach to the burn barrel where a half-dozen set netters shuffle their boots in the gravel, shifting a bit, trying each to keep out of the sooty smoke. You recognize a few, hands on boats you've waved to each time you pass this summer. They make room for you. Somebody's telling a story how they drove hard aground in the dark on a sandbar and spent 6 hours missing fish and waiting for the tide. It's funny now. Somebody else hands you a can of beer. You've got other things to do, but one of them isn't catching fish here at the end of the season, so you linger with the scruffy collection of fishermen. An Amishman errant from Olson's crew. A young woman you recognize from Emmy's. Old Tom from the inlet, and 2 Hispanic guys, farm workers' sons from the valley. 2 black guys, one an Iraq war vet you'll learn, who share a cigarette. And you, maybe white and master's degreed, wonder at the bonds that knit this American menagerie together around this burned barrel at stubborn dusk, this drizzly Alaskan evening. It's a divisive season in our country, but not here. Nor in Astoria, Oregon each February, where scores of folks like these gather to celebrate what we have in common, our work in the commercial fishing industry. When it started 21 years ago, the Fisher Poets Gathering hosted 40 or so men and women, mostly from the Pacific Northwest, many of them found from poetry published in the Alaska Fisherman's Journal. Over the years, musicians, storytellers, and poets from other commercial fishing cultures have joined us, to everyone's delight, building creative bridges between our coastal cultures. Point Judith, New Bedford, Tarpon Springs, and the Cranberry Islands dropped in. San Francisco and Chesapeake, Morrow and Tomales Bays showed up. Folks who'd never seen a grouper or set foot on a lobster boat, who had only a vague idea of a blue crab, nodded, winced, and laughed at stories sung, recited, and told from coasts far away from theirs. To everybody's surprise, the public seemed interested. And in February, at a dozen venues along Astoria's waterfront, and a couple thousand fans of commercial fishing culture will hear 100 or so of its creative voices celebrate together the work we love, mostly. If you've got a story to tell, pull up to the burn barrel. We'll make room for you. Join us in Astoria next year, February 28th to March 1st. It's a leap year, so we'll be careful. Well, thanks so much for coming. It was a delightful year, wasn't it? Jay might have a few announcements. Thank you. Yeah, it was just delightful. Thanks so much.